Well, firstly, thank you so much for coming through at a very short notice. Let's start with the drama that's been unfolding throughout the day, and I suppose even in the days before today. Behind the scenes, ANC leaders are said to have met with Gigaba and said, listen, jump or be pushed.
Look, I suspect when you really look at what's happened over the past couple of weeks in relation to Malusi Gigaba, he had that damning, directive from the Public Protector's Office, which simply said to the president that, look, based on the fact that this man has been found to have lied under oath in multiple court cases, I, as a public protector, have got no choice but to simply say that if a minister has been found to have lied under oath, then of course this is a violation of the ethics code that a minister ought to subscribe to. So I do think that the Public Protector's recommendation was really derived from what the court cases had said. Now, of course, there was still always an opportunity for Malusi Gigaba to overturn that if the Constitutional Court had given him an opportunity to then argue in an alternative. And of course, as soon as the Constitutional Court said that there's nothing for you to argue, it means that obviously whatever the High Court had said and what the Supreme Court had confirmed became the standing issues of there. And of course, the president really then had to respond to the Public Protector's recommendations.
But it's been interesting to see how it's all unfolded in the recent days, because of course, when he finally did appear before the Portfolio Committee, there seemed to be, cynically you might say, a little bit of protection there. It wasn't certain it was going to go this way.
Yeah, look, I suppose the big problem that we had with that portfolio committee is that they had essentially invited him to come and make representations long before the Public Protector and the Constitutional Court made their pronouncements. So of course for them it was a matter of, well, once the Public Protector and the Constitutional Court have made pronouncements, why should we even bother entertain this matter any further? Because we can't possibly come up with their recommendation or a conclusion that differs with what the Public Protector and the Constitutional Court had said. So for them, they really took the safe option, which is to say, we're not even going to entertain this conversation because it doesn't matter what we think. The Crown Court and the Public Protector, which are essentially upper in the hierarchy, have already made their pronouncements. So they simply said that we're going to sit this one out. And of course, it looked like a farce because everyone was saying, well, why did you still invite him? But of course, people forgot that the invitation had been given to him long before the Constitutional Court and the Public Protector had made their pronouncements.
All right, there's a lot for you and I to unpack throughout this evening. We'll ask you to stay just a little bit longer. We're going to continue taking reaction to this story, the resignation of Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba. As you would expect, a number of political leaders are going to be weighing in. But Francis, as I understand, you've got some more reaction.
Indeed, let's get some reaction from political leaders. On the line, we have UDM leader Bantu Holomisa. Mr. Holomisa, your reaction to Malusi Gigaba's resignation?
The UDM welcomes the decision by the ANC to advise Gigaba to resign. And also, if he had done so on his own volition, we hope that he will now be free to go and testify at the Zondo Commission, in particular to shed light on who instructed him or his department that they should bankroll the Guptas on SABC breakfast shows. Because this is where the Guptas got a lot of money, wherein they got sponsors, or they are from the SOEs like Transnet, Eskom, Prasa. Out of that, they took a lot of millions. They got a lot of millions. And I think Gigaba is now free to tell the country, was it a cabinet decision to do this, where they also couldn't, that Guptas could not even pay a cent to the SABC, but used their station as a conduit to siphon monies from those SOEs. So what he has done in the past, lying and so on, we accept that he's gone now, lying under the oath, but there's a lot of things which he needs to clarify.
So you believe that he's involved in state capture and he should blow the whistle on others involved?
Definitely, he is now free. He can speak freely. He must tell us why, because it could have not been Gigaba's initiative to allow all his SOEs to pay for advertisement of a Gupta program to prop up the ministers. They were celebrating at that stage, and we were questioning this. How come that they use the SOE's monies? So I think, in a way, he's got an opportunity, unless the NEC took a decision to say, save us, be a fall guy. Otherwise,
Mr. Holomisa, let me just ask you one final question, because we are running out of time. In the beginning of this interview, you said the ANC asked him to go. Is that definite information that you have?
That is my analysis of the situation. The Gigaba was vehemently opposed last week. What has changed his mind other than the NEC or the leadership of the ANC, which might have advised him to go?
All right. Thank you very much, UDM leader Bantu Holomisa. We will also be speaking to the ANC. We're hoping to speak to the presidency as well as other parties. But back to Bongani, more analysis from your desk.
Yes, indeed. We're going to be joined now by John Steenhuisen, of course, from the Democratic Alliance, the chief whip for that party in Parliament. John, good evening to you. Your reaction. Malusi Gigaba may be gone, but there's still a lot to answer for in terms of his role, specifically, of course, when he was the Minister of Public Enterprises.
Of course, Bongani, and that's a big question this evening. Of course, we welcome the resignation. It's 2 weeks too late. He left it far too long. But nonetheless, it's here and obviously jumping before he was pushed. But that does not absolve him of a series of accountabilities that he's going to have to answer for acts of omission and commission that he committed while he was holding a variety of public offices in the executive, whether it was at Home Affairs, trade, public enterprises, or in finance. Clearly an enabler of state capture, someone who actively supported the entrenchment of state capture, and his resignation now cannot mean that is the end of the road. And so the Zondo Commission must complete its work. Parliament's inquiry into Eskom and other states and entities has already completed its work, and it's already concluded that Mr. Gigaba has a case to answer, and these must follow, and people must be held accountable, including Mr. Gigaba. His resignation cannot be the end of the road for executive accountability.
He's consistently said, of course, that nothing specific can be pinned down to him in terms of any wrongdoing whilst he was at public enterprises. There are other issues, of course, at Home Affairs, for instance. But in the context of what we've been hearing in the Zondo Commission, particularly from Barbara Hogan, how then do you start unpacking what was happening at SOEs during his tenure?
Well, frankly, I think that Mrs. Hogan's testimony this week has pulled the carpet out from underneath Minister Gigaba. We can see exactly how appointments were being made and why they were being made. And whether or not he was doing those at the behest of President Zuma or for his own ends, nonetheless, they were appointments that were made for the wrong reasons, not for what's the best interest of the state-owned enterprises or the best interest of South Africans, but rather the best interest of Mr. Zuma and his patronage network of rent seekers around him. And so he still has to answer those, because the executive action may have been at the order of President Zuma, but it was certainly executive action taken by Minister Gigaba.
Right. The DA has been pursuing action against the president to fire Gigaba. He's gone now. Will you still pursue the same against Bathabile Dlamini?
Absolutely. I think it's important that we continue on what Mr. Gigaba has fallen on his sword. Involuntarily, I would submit. But nonetheless, there's still a number of key actors within the cabinet today who were at the heart of state capture. One thinks here of Bathabile Dlamini, but also Mrs. Nomvula Mokanyane, who still to account for the millions that went in the department.
All right, the DA's John Steenhuisen on the line there, line breaking up right there at the end. So we'll continue taking reaction, but of course, certainly analysis